This is our AUK marking gauge. So we were using this if we were marking out cutting with the grain for widths and thicknesses, or across the grain for tenons or dovetails. It's really quite easy to use. We can adjust it with one hand for fine adjustment and lock off the locking nuts. One of the most common places we're going to use a marking gauge is if we are hand planing timber. We're going to use it to mark out either the width or the thickness of the timber. So for this one, there's two locking nuts on there. I can undo them, I can move this up and down. We've got metric markings on one side, we've got imperial on the other. Or often I'll use it in conjunction with a ruler. So let's say I want to get down to an 18mm thickness. I'll get it down so we're pretty close to 18mm. Lock off the one knob, and then I can do actually with my finger, I can move this in and out so I get it to an accurate setting at my 18mm. But I'm happy with my size. I will lock him off and we are good to go. A wheel marking gauge is going to be very good for doing width cuts as it won't follow the grain. Traditional marking gauge can be quite difficult to use. So I put them up against my face. I can literally mark a very clean, neat line in here for me to plane down to. Another place we're going to use a marking gauge with a wheel on it is for marking out the shoulders on dovetails or tenons. We could use the ruler to actually set up the size, but if I already got my timber, which has been pre-machined and it's nice and accurate, if I sit the one timber on top of the other, what I can do is set my gauge on here, literally bring this down, hold him nice and tight, bring that down and lock these knobs off. We've now got that set exactly to the thickness of our timber. So to make the marking line across, if you used a traditional marking gauge with a pin, you'd get a very scratched line. But this actually will give you a very clean and crisp shoulder line to work to, and your chisel will find that line beautifully. So the gauge is going to give us a really good crisp line for our shoulders for these dovetails. These are through dovetails, so we'd mark it out to the thickness as I've just shown. The other place a marking gauge really comes in useful is when you're doing lap dovetails, because we'll set it to the length of the tail and we can use it to mark both the draw side and the draw front, because the marking for the tail and also the socket it goes into has to match up exactly, and that marking gauge will bring that across. We also will use marking gauges for marking out hinges. We need to mark out the width of the leaf and also the thickness of the leaf. So we might have two gauges, or we'd have to reset it twice for this kind of method. It's a very easy bit of kit to use, but also maintenance wise, you want to make sure you're going to look after it. If you finish doing the work with it, undo the two screws and you can put the cutter back into the head. So when you put it in your toolbox, it's not going to get damaged. Also, if you're on the workbench with it, it won't roll off the workbench. It'll stay steady rather than falling off. If you want to change the amount of tension for actually the bar that slides, there's a little nylon screw you can use, tighten it up and you'll get a little bit tighter on the tension for the sliding bar. Otherwise, leave it as it is. Very easy tool to use. One of the only ones you can use one-handed whilst holding your ruler. Most of the other fine adjusters take two hands and an extra hand for the ruler. AUK has their own brand for Woodworkers Workshop, but we also have other marking gauges available. So we have the WoodRiver, or the Veritas marking gauge, or the Veritas dual marking gauge.